Hello, ako si G. Geronimo at welcome to the Green Report, Rappler's podcast on the environment and the stories of people whose decisions impact the world around us. Kung napansin nyo, or baka di nyo napansin, 1 month kaming nawala. Ay, ako pala. Because life happened. But we're back at babawi kami sa inyo with a roundup of some of September's biggest local and international stories on the environment. Joining me today is Rapper Digicom's specialist pala. Analyst. Ginawa kitang analyst. Digicom specialist Iya Gozo, who is not a guest today, but a co-host. Hello, Iya.
Hello, G.
You're back
so,
again.
Baka interested yung natin, listeners. Ano daw yung because life happened? Bakit walang buo September?
Ano ba yan? Bakit biglang ganon? Ba't naging ganon bigla yung topic natin? Hindi. Nagbakasyon ako. First bakasyon ko in this year. So, medyo mahaba-haba yung bakasyon. Pero I'm back and I'm happy to be here talking to you. What that 1 month meant was, kailangan ko rin mag-catch up sa mga storya.
Sa buong September halos.
So, I guess what we're going to do today is exactly that. We were going to catch up
on the September headlines.
So, both of us picked our top 3 stories, yung top environment stories from September. And what we're going to do is just discuss briefly what happened during that month. And then, siguro we can ask each other questions about what we're curious about in those stories. Sige, simulan mo, Iya. Ano ang una mong
So, yung unang story for September, no? Syempre, love your own. So, ito, nangyari lang malapit sa atin, no? Yung recently na merong armed men malapit sa Masungi Reserve. So, according to the management, since September 3 pa daw, yung mga around 30 men na nakacamp outside Masungi, along Marikina, Marilake Highway. And these men were from Sinagtala Security Agency and were reportedly there to take land and sell them, which is illegal under the law. And then eventually 2 days after Masungi posted and it gathered a lot of traction online, PNP confiscated around 15 firearms.
Not so because, may firearms talaga yung mga men
meron talaga. And Masungi posted a photo ng mga firearms na confiscated. But they didn't arrest anyone. Nag-confiscate lang sila. They said merong license daw yung firearms. They are legal, but hindi nakapag-present ng license yung security men when the PNP asked them to show their license. So siguro mga a week after that, less than a week after that, the men voluntarily left. Yun yung sabi ng PNP and DILG. And then after that, nag-release ng statement yung Masungi saying that was a small win. Kumbaga, in the grand scheme of things, kasi this is not an isolated case. This is something that the Masungi management has been experiencing throughout their 20-year history. So, napakadami ng ganito. In fact, yung parang press briefing with Ben Dumaliang, yung founder ng Masungi.
So humarap siya?
Yeah, humarap siya. Kasama niya DLG Secretary, PNP Chief, and DNR Undersecretary Leones. Kasama niya dun sa press briefing. And he was really impatient. Parang wala na siya dun sa parang kailangan okay siya sa camera or whatever. Very frustrated na rin yung language niya. And he was really urging the government to take action. So
doon pa lang mapapansin mo na that this is not new.
Yeah.
Hindi siya, like, it's a repeated occurrence. Talagang nangyayari paulit-ulit.
Oo. Sawa na sila. Kumbaga, parang ganun na yung tono nila, Ben.
Yeah. What's interesting is, actually, Masungi yung last nating topic dito sa...
Yes. Actually,
and ang call natin doon ay, let's really be more vigilant, diba? And let's...
yung mga ganitong klaseng attacks,
ganitong mga,
diba? You can call them attacks kasi they're occupying that land, threatening
Is there anything about the story that piqued your interest particularly? Kasi nga, we've been saying repeated attacks na nga to sa Masungi and in that area. But is there something about that story in particular that tingin mo parang, huy, parang There's something here.
Na bago. Actually, parang wala kasing bago dun sa mga nangyari. But what was interesting was si Ben Dumaling yung humarap dun sa press briefing. Actually, nagulat ako na siya yung humarap. Kasi usually, kapag may ganitong issues, usually yung magkapatid, si Anne and Billy Dumaliang, who are managing trustees of the Masungi Foundation, sila usually yung humaharap. And then ngayon, si Ben. So, you can see na gano'n na yung level of frustration na Ben is really going out there and facing the press and then telling them na it's time that the government has to take action. Kasi yung land na kino-contest naman, these are protected areas na dapat nga the government is parang actively
it should be protecting.
Yeah, actively doing something. Yun.
Okay. Yun naalala ko this story kasi it's the first story when I got back from vacation.
Yeah.
So parang ako, ano ba yung pagbalik ko? Meron ng
patapos
ganito.
na or middle of
yeah. Tapos parang
September.
sabi ko, grabe talaga na parang, I mean, you know, you don't know.
It doesn't stop.
It doesn't. You don't know what will happen next. So I hope that it doesn't happen again. Na magkaroon na that our environment defenders, our forest rangers they can do their jobs well.
Yeah. And safely.
They don't have to feel like every day is
a struggle. Or
struggle.
every day something will happen.
Or okay, parang they have to fear for their lives every day. Yeah. Sige. Ako naman, yung aking top 3, sige. Para
Top
pababa. Yung top 3 story ko is, actually, for this pod, I invited Raisa Bello, one of our environmental reporters. Freelancer siya for, and she's been contributing environment stories for Rappler. I actually invited her to record a podcast episode, pero she couldn't. But I wanted to highlight her story, which is our series on the reclamations in the Philippines. And actually, this particular story, so there are two stories. The series mapped and analyzed available data on past, current, tsaka mga potential reclamations. So reclamation is basically yun yung paggamit ng bodies of water and turning them into reclaiming them para to build structures, infrastructure, pwedeng for economic reasons, pwedeng kunyari Manila Bay, Dolomite Beach is well, contested siya. Some people say it's a reclamation, some people don't. Pero don't think it is. Pero yun, basically reclaiming bodies of water and turning them into lands para magamit sila for whatever purpose.
For the economy.
Yeah, for the economy supposedly, yes. So this particular series, it really focused on the promise nga daw of reclamation for an economic boom in the country.
Yeah.
Pero scientists and environmentalists oppose this practice, of course, for adverse and permanent effects on natural resources at saka kung ano yung epekto niya sa mga community. So pwedeng displacements, we've reported about this before in the case of the Bulacan Erotropolis na it really displaced communities, families, di ba? And then meron ding issues of food insecurity. Tsaka, ito yung pinaka alarming actually. It's the exacerbation of calamity. I mean, na yung floodings could worsen because of reclamation projects. And but instead, despite of those worries, those issues about reclamation, yung story ni Raisa really looked into how the reclamation projects in the Philippines are actually increasing, and it really did under the previous administration. Kay President Rodrigo Duterte, there are 187 proposed and ongoing reclamation projects in the Philippines. They are increasingly backed by the national and local government. So hindi lang to basta ang mga proponents ito hindi lang basta businesses. Parang there are actually kaya nga sila na-approve kasi ibig sabihin they were approved by local governments, local environment offices, Pero ang mahirap dito sa situation na to is there are so many projects but the systems to regulate them magulo. And it has yet to catch up with the booming practice of reclamation. And ang interesting dito sa story na to, Iya, we started working on this story as early as February, actually. February this year. Oo. Pero September lang siya na-publish. Actually, I was out, nakabakasyon na ako when it was published. Pero nothing has changed much in that duration, in that September, from February to September. And we were aiming to publish this ng bago actually mag-election eh. So, ang dami pa naging tweaks kasi nga, syempre, yung language ng storya, yung circumstance.
Very technical siya rin.
Yes,
no? It's a very
kasi
technical story.
the story, talagang literally it mapped. May maps dun sa ano na parang okay. Based on the mapping, makikita mo na concentrated yung mga projects in certain areas. What does that say about the projects that are getting approved, the places where they are getting approved? So, technical siya in a way, pero tiningnan niya rin yung historical context ng reclamation in the Philippines. Kung paanong matagal na tong practice na to na nangyayari sa Pilipinas.
Yeah, parang nabanggit din dun sa story na parang ever since the Spanish colonial times or American colonial period.
Nagulat din ako dun. And even under the Marcos Senior administration, di ba? Meron ding may mga places din na reclaim. So, it's not new, but what's alarming about it is it has increased in recent years. As in kahit sino siguro ang tanongin natin, makikita na, biglang may mga infrastructures near bodies of water. And that's very alarming, not only because they're displacing communities and may mga mangroves din na na-uproot eh. And we all know what mangroves mean for our disaster resilience, di ba? Aside from that, yun nga, meron talagang risk of floodings in areas na napapalitan na nagiging buildings instead of just being bodies of water.
I have a question kasi
sure.
parang given itong mga parang downsides on reclamation projects, it stands na ingrained pa rin talaga siya sa how we build things, 'di ba? Kasi partner ang government, ang local government. So parang may tipong bas-bas kumbaga. So kunyari yung sa Bulacan Airport, parang it's a big project. It's touted siya as for development, as an economic booster. And a lot of these reclamation projects are labeled like that. Yun yung narrative niya. Parang siguro, tatanong ko, ano yung laban dito ng environment community, ng advocates? Kasi parang in the bigger picture, parang they're always seen as these pesky little people na parang puro protesta, puro against sa development na ina-usher in ng private companies.
Yan nga yung linyahan lagi na parang anti-development, ganyan. Pero, doon sa story na sinulat ni Riza, the advocates, the environmental advocates there were saying na kung itong mga projects na to are supposedly for people kasi 'di ba dumadami yung tao, you offer more jobs because of these projects. Bakit tao rin yung naapektuhan? Kasi tao rin yung
are being displaced, diba?
So tao yung naapektuhan nung yung displacement and even afterwards yung climate, yung disasters. So ang laban nila, of course, is they have the science to back them up. They can always say na, this is what the science is saying. And actually, experts have spoken up about against projects like this na parang hindi masyadong pinag-aralan, may ibang mga minadali. I'm not saying lahat, pero may mga ibang minadali. So, ang maganda dito, even our officials are kaya yesterday, we had a story about Senator Cynthia Villar.
Yeah,
diba?
na nagmura siya sa DNR budget hearing.
Na pinansin niya yung reclamation projects in the Manila Cavite area, di ba? Na parang talagang she lost her temper over the reclamation projects, di ba? Which is surprising kasi parang first time, I don't know if this is, pero at least for me, while I have been covering the environment beat, parang first time to na talagang pinuna ang reclamation projects na
ng isang
sa ganung setting.
okay.
Or baka lang I've missed other instances. But what it says in that story na niron natin kahapon, the Environment Secretary Maria Antonia Yulo Loizaga, haba ng name niya. Nahihirapan pa rin ako sabihin until now. Actually sabi niya, her agency would be revisiting the policies on reclamation projects. So parang that's a I guess a good sign, a good
and that
indication.
That is yung sinabi niya, that has substance. Hindi lang niya basta sinabi kasi she is a woman of rin, 'di ba? Yun yung background niya academe, science.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll have to see,
we'll
'di ba?
see.
Kasi
Kung paano yun nagta-translate
anyone
sa
can say
government.
na we will revisit policies, 'di
Yeah.
ba? Pero we will see if that will really happen under this new administration, the Marcos administration, and how soon. Kasi naman, I mean, hindi ko alam kung ano yung circumstance, meron bang naging kumbaga baka si Senator Cynthia Villar, meron ba siyang sinabi na okay, hindi ko a-approve yung budget nyo? May mga ganun ba siyang sinabi? Hindi ko na masyadong napanood yung buong budget hearing. But that is I guess a sign in the good direction.
Good direction.
But we will see kung magkakatotoo,
Kung
how
may
soon
mangyayari
that
about
will happen. And until then, we'll have to contend na, well, the projects will continue. Hindi naman porket sinabi ni Secretary biglang isa-stop na lahat. We'll have to wait.
And that's the
what will
sad
happen.
thing about it kasi parang binabak na siya ng science na hindi maganda yung epekto, but still
Kailangan pang
dumadami
i-revisit.
yung projects,
Oo,
yes, and i-revisit pa.
Yun ang aking it's a very interesting story, and I hope we get to follow it pa rin. Dahil it's a very serious issue that I think kailangan talagang bantayan ng mga environmental journalists.
Yeah, when you go beyond the technical aspects of
Yes.
the story.
I guess
makita mo pa rin at the heart, communities pa rin.
Yes. Pero yung technical aspect niya sobrang actually challenging talaga siya. Oo, sobrang challenging kasi talagang regulations
Yeah.
malulunod ka sa regulations ng reclamation projects. But yeah, as you said, at the heart of it, people are still affected. So that's why it's
Yun pa
worth
rin
pursuing.
Yun pa rin ang kwento.
Yes. Ikaw, Iya, what's your next
Okay.
story?
So, talking about this sa vein ng community, looking for alternate solutions, we have this big headline, international headline. Recently, just this September, Patagonia, a sportswear brand, went purpose instead of going public. So what does this mean? Patagonia, this sportswear company, recently, its owner, Yvonne Chouinard, 83 years old, so yan. A rock climber gave away 2% of his company to a trust, the Patagonia Purpose Trust, and 98% to Holdfast Collective, a non-profit that aims to address environmental problems and the climate crisis. So why is this a big deal? Personally, for me, it's the disregard for business norms. Kasi it's a huge company. Chouinard was already part of Forbes billionaires lists. And when he saw that, he was horrified. Na, parang nagalit siya. Kasi bakit siya? Yun siya, not
effect
pride.
Sa kanya.
Yun yung effect sa kanya, not pride. And that was one of the things that spurred them into action. Na this is not his vision for the company. He didn't make Patagonia to enrich himself. That was not the point. The point is, rock climber siya. Kailangan niya ng maayos na gears. By maayos means durable, mapoprotektahan ka sa elements ng outdoors, ng nature. It was not to enrich himself. And even his family, even his children, they don't want to inherit the company. So that was, yun yung sabi nila, they were going purpose instead of going public. Kasi they don't Yvon Chouinard, he doesn't trust the market. Sabi niya, I don't trust the market. He doesn't believe in it. Kasi sabi niya, once you go public, yung vision, yung principles ng kumpanya, mawawala siya. Mawawala yung essence ng company. So that was yun yung rason kung bakit 2% of the company goes to a trust, to the Patagonia Purpose Trust. It's to uphold the company's values. And then yung 98% na mapupunta sa non-profit ay to address the problems. And even then, even before that, nagbinabantayan na ng Patagonia yung production nila, parang they have to pay, syempre, living wages to factory workers, 98% or 100% of the materials they use are recycled, and then mga Patagonia na gears, you can trade in for newer ones, and then they sell the old ones for lower price. So that, hindi puro produce, no, you give, you trade in, etc., etc. So that's the story na parang it made headlines for the outdoor siguro medyo niche siya na story. It made headlines sa outdoor community, sa environmental advocate community na pwede pala yun. Parang yun yung whole, I think yung main whole yung immediate takeaway ng mga tao. Pwede pala yun. When you have the will or the courage, I guess, to do things differently, meron siyang magandang kalalabasan.
Yeah, and you also see na hindi lang siya PR move, as you have been saying na it has really been a part of their I guess company values.
Yeah,
diba?
And the value of the family. Of the family
themselves.
And I think wala tong parang tax benefit. In fact, parang sila pa yung magbibigay magbabayad ng taxes for the donation that they made for the trust around.
So what does this say for companies like yun nga Patagonia?
Yeah. Actually parang they're setting the the standard. I think not only for sportswear brands but to other brands in general, kasi ngayon yung mga brands meron na silang madali lang kasi magsabi na we support this, we support that, we donate this thing, blah,
and
blah, blah.
That has been a trend talaga recently
trend
among
na siya.
companies, di ba? Na talagang yung support nila for the environment, ganyan. Pero for Patagonia,
it's easy to say kasi, 'di ba? Pero for Patagonia, it's really the will, the advocacy, and the personal values of the owner. Kasi parang to give away your company na worth around $3 billion, parang it's not an easy thing to do. Kasi tinayo mo yun eh. So, giving that away for a cause that's bigger than you.
Yeah.
Sabi ni Yvon Chouinard sa New York Times, he actually felt relieved nung
when he decided
na sa
on that.
kanya. Yeah, nung nawala na sa kanya. Kasi parang now he knows where it will go and kampante na siya. Kumbaga, ganun.
So parang it also signals that businesses can do more, I guess, di ba? Na parang other than pledges or mga token lang na support, di ba? Parang this is a very solid example that businesses can do more.
Yeah, it sets an example. It's what we should be parang demanding. Halos nga from companies, kasi dapat hindi na tayo dapat kontento sa mga pa-statement lang kasi ang dali nun eh. Yun na yung trend ngayon nga for brands.
Right.
Parang if we're going to have a plan for the future, if we really understand the urgency of the climate crisis, parang we should be doing these bold moves that and trailblaze, diba? For and set an example for others.
Jumping off from international headlines, another story that has been talagang, I think this is an alarming thing that's been happening internationally. These are the floodings elsewhere in the world. And ang dami, September pa lang, ang dami nang nangyari. First, sa Korea, yung super typhoon Hinamnor, which actually spared the Philippines. It was in this direction, pero mas nagkaroon siya ng impact sa South Korea at saka sa Japan. And actually, hindi ito yung typhoon, pero merong even before that in August sa Korea actually, merong biglang flooding na nangyari, torrential rains, and then it was very alarming because talagang grabe yung floodings in places na hindi in-expect in places in Seoul na hindi in-expect ng mga Koreans themselves. And yung isang nangyari doon na talagang na headline is yung merong family, I guess. Family or a person living dun sa mga dun sa mga basement apartments nila.
Yung parang sa Parasite.
Parasite, yes. So parang ganon, merong family or basta merong nalunod kasi nga biglang biglang bumuhos yung flood eh. Tapos so parang talagang parasite pala siya talaga.
Oo, parang parasite.
But in this instance, they died unfortunately. And then sobrang that really hit a nerve doon na parang okay, saan galing to biglang baha na to? Talagang makikita mo talaga if you search the photos. I think talagang tataas talaga ng mga...
It's not unusual siya.
Unusual siya for them, yes. And alam ko meron pang... What's funny is parang talagang first world... Alam mo yung mga first world countries. First world countries experiencing... na dapat actually hindi naman tayo nasasanay. Pero unfortunately, sanay na tayo dito sa Pilipinas. Pero for them, that it's really new na talagang meron doon, naalala ko merong photo. Again, this is not yung mismong Super Typhoon Hinamnor. Kasi Super Typhoon Hinamnor actually hit yung sa may bandang Busan, Jeju part. So, hindi masyadong affected yung Seoul. Although, malakas din yung ulan sa Seoul. Pero, dun sa nagbaha nung August sa Seoul mismo, naalala ko, meron parang na-stuck na isang kotse nabaha siya. And then, alam ko na, either wala nang magawa, I guess, yung driver or yung may-ari ng kotse. So, lumabas lang siya. Tapos, alam ko, nag-cellphone siya or something.
Huh?
So, parang gets mo na parang this is really something na hindi nila na-experience regularly.
Wait, sorry, ba't siya nag-cellphone?
Ewan ko. Parang siguro siya.
Call for help? Ganon?
Instagram. Kasi nag-spread siya sa social media. So, parang this is really... climate change is really here. And we just have to look at this example. So that's Super Typhoon Hinamnor. That's just one. And then, in Florida, more than 100 people have died. Florida alone due to Hurricane Ian, which made landfall in late September. So, sabi nung isang New York Times article last October 7, many of those who died in Florida are old-aged or mga basta mas matatanda who died of drowning. So
hindi sila nag-evacuate?
Yes. So, parang or baka talagang hindi nila expect na ganun kalakas.
Na ganun kalala.
Ganun kalala yung mangyayari. Kasi sobrang isolated. In Florida lang to. Tapos more than 100 people. Yung numbers na ganun, very alarming na yun. Even for us, di ba, na dito sa Pilipinas, pag umabot ng hundreds, sabihin that's a really huge, pero dito sa Florida lang to nangyari. So that's another flooding incident. And then, of course, in Pakistan, which has been happening for months na, torrential rains, their unprecedented monsoon season. Since June 14, it has destroyed lives, livelihoods, and infrastructure. And so far, ito talaga nagulat ako when I was looking for this story. So far, in just 3 months, so June, July, I guess 4 months, 1,700 people have died in Pakistan because of the flooding na due to that monsoon season. And $30 billion na siya in damage to the country's economy. So, we see in just 1 month, iba't ibang bansa ang naapektuhan. And in fact, di ba? So,
even here in
the
the Philippines,
Philippines.
Diba? Carding is September din.
September ba yun? Yes, okay.
September.
So, talagang it really is alarming that these floodings are happening in the same month in different countries. And talagang ang laki na nung damage and ang laki na ng impact niya in lives in countries.
And it's a preview of what's to come in the next years. Na
yes.
Climate
if we do
change,
not do something about climate change. Yeah.
And that climate change, wala siyang wala siyang pakialam kung siya talaga
Yes.
tinao.
Tinao.
Walang pakialam kung first world ka, kung third world citizen ka.
Right.
We're all affected.
Yes. And yun yung clear case, no? Nakita mo yung spectrum of
Korea, tapos
countries.
US, and then Pakistan.
Pakistan, yes.
And then tayo rin.
Tayo rin.
This September,
Yes.
meron din eh.
Oo.
So parang, I guess, sana wake up call for the leaders of these
Especially
countries.
meron na naman naka-isang taon na naman, meron na namang
Ah.
UN climate conference,
conference
'di ba?
na naman.
By the end of this year. So what has happened since then, 'di ba? Parang I guess what we're going to have to do is drum up talaga calls for especially developed countries to do something.
Do you think it's only fair to ask developed countries for aid?
Of course naman. Kasi yung impact is on developing countries like us when we do not contribute as much to the
crisis.
Yes, to the crisis, to the
Yeah.
greenhouse gas emissions. Sila talaga yung mas malaki dapat yung pledges at mas malaki dapat yung, but nung kino-cover natin yung UN climate conference last year, makikita mo talaga na it's really a diplomatic process that you have to go through. Hindi siya
You
talagang
can't demand.
ibabalance mo talaga yung
Yeah.
interests of all
Yeah.
countries
Yeah.
in mind. Siguro what this particular incident shows lang talaga, or this yung nangyari just this September, it shows that it's hindi lang developing countries ang apektado. Talagang we're all in this and we really have to do something. And I guess mas dapat pa tayong kailangan pa nating concrete eh. Hindi lang basta pledges, hindi lang
Yeah.
basta okay, let's climate change is real. Matagal na tapos na yung conversation about that.
It's here.
It's here, it's happening. We're running out of time and we have to do something about it.
Pero speaking of yung ganitong diplomatic process, do you think it's fair na parang pag sinabi na ibabalance yung interests of developed and developing nations sa mga ganitong klaseng pledges, parang is that fair? Kasi parang for me, medyo hindi. Kasi di ba parang when you're in an emergency, ipaprioritize mo yung needs ng apektado.
That's true. What I'm saying is, yun lang yung nangyayari talaga in conferences like
And
this.
in that kind of
it's
setting,
the reality.
in
Yes,
that kind of setting.
yes, it's the reality of what's happening in these conferences. Whether the question is if it's fair or not, di ba? Of course it's not. Parang we're running out of time. We're running out of time, and we want these countries to be to put their money where their
And
mouth
also
is,
to be held
diba?
accountable for their
Exactly.
actions.
So, yun. That's where we are, and dapat mas maalarma tayo.
Maalarma pa.
Because, just one life lost is a big life. It's a big thing. And in these countries, thousands, hundreds are dying because we're not acting fast enough. Pero sa Pilipinas din, actually, di ba?
Actually, just this September 25, Typhoon Karding, the 11th tropical cyclone in the Philippines, made landfall in Bordeos, Quezon. And then it caused heavy rains. It caused heavy rains in Luzon, flooding rin, lalo na sa Bulacan. So, there's 12 deaths reported as of September 30. 5 dito yung rescue workers from Bulacan, which
Grabe,
yun yung-
alam mo, galing akong Bulacan kahapon. Or the other, wait lang. Ano na ba ngayon? Wala nang, Wednesday. Nung Sunday, galing akong Bulacan. And then talagang pinag-uusapan nila na yung this is big loss talaga yung 5 rescue workers na yun. Kasi nga, kilala talaga sila as really experts in the field. But even they could not have anticipated yung nangyari during Karding. Yeah, go on.
And as someone who's monitoring social media nung disaster coverage, yun din talaga yung top story natin. The 5 rescue workers who died during a flash flood in the middle of a rescue operation. So that really struck a chord in the country na parang yung mga rescue workers na namatay. Given na sanay na, quote unquote, na tayo sa mga ganitong disasters na on lives lost during these
Pero actually, di ba,
disasters.
parang dapat hindi tayo nasasanay.
Yeah, dapat hindi. And this shows that yung story ng 5 rescue workers na namatay, na people are really sympathizing. Filipinos are not, hindi tayo sanay. Sanay na siguro tayo na nangyayari siya yearly kasi 20 typhoons annually tayo, di ba? Average. Pero it will always strike us in our hearts kapag ka ganitong may mga kamatayan. And it's these are the kind of stories na kailangan nating isipin when we think about the future. Yung how these stories made us feel. Kasi in the future, sabi nga nila, kapag mas lumala na yung climate crisis, diba, this is just a preview of what's to come. We will lose more people. We will lose more of what we own if we don't do something.
And this typhoons, these hurricanes, they get stronger and stronger.
Yeah. And
as
also,
the years
incidentally, September 25 siya naglandfall. And then the next day, yung anniversary ng Ondoy.
Yes.
Na 13 years ago. And also, September 26 din yung Save Sierra Madre Day. Na timely din kasi nung naglandfall si Carding, isa sa mga trending topics on social media is Sierra Madre because people were thanking Sierra Madre for shielding us, for protecting us, etc., etc. Pero yun nga, I mean, aside from saying thank you to the mountain range that shields us from typhoons, syempre, nandun pa rin yung usapin nga nung we need to protect it. If we're really like thankful, if we see its purpose, its contribution talaga, contribution to life's processes sa Pilipinas, sa atin. There are a lot of things to improve in the conservation of Sierra Madre.
Right. Okay. So, dahil nakabalik na tayo sa local headlines,
Yeah.
Our last headline for today is, of course, our new president's 100 days in office. So, we're going to talk about, yung for my top 1 headline, I'm going to talk about Marcos and what he has done for the environment, or at least what he has said he will do for the environment in the last 100 days. So, ang unang-una syempre na nangyari in the last since June when he was inaugurated was, of course, he already named a DENR secretary. Buti na lang hindi nagtagal. Well, hanggang ngayon wala pang
parang na-late.
Pero, yes. Kasi, well, in the grand scheme of things na wala pa tayong DOH secretary.
Parang,
diba?
ay, ang aga pala.
Buti pala.
Yun.
July 12. So we already have a DNR secretary, as I mentioned earlier, si Secretary Loizaga, whose nomination as secretary was announced on July 12, diba? So, we know about her expertise, yung experience niya on climate disaster resilience, and meron din siyang experience sa Manila Observatory, which is a research institute with a focus on climate pa din, environmental and pre-disaster science. So, what we know so far is that this is her expertise, which is what we need right now, especially in light of the climate crisis. And then, those who've worked with her say we can expect more science into the policy and decision making.
And consultative.
And yun nga yung sabi niya in her first speech as a secretary, na ang gusto niya yung DNR mas maging consultative daw and science-based. So what consultative means is, I guess, open to what the experts say about the science of the environment, of climate, and that's what we're hoping so far, na makita talaga sa magiging decisions niya. Kasi what we've seen, I guess, in the past administration with former Secretary Simatu was really talagang very, mas nag-focus kasi si Secretary Simatu on the parang rehabilitation, yung mas face value ng environment. Kasi yun yung unang makikita eh. So, yung rehabilitation ng rehabilitation kuno ng
Parang
Boracay.
Dolomite, gano'n.
Oo, or ng Manila Bay, di ba? Na, I don't know, hindi pa ako nakapunta ng Boracay. Maganda ba? Hindi ko alam. Hindi ko alam kung talagang may naging effective ba talaga yung rehabilitation.
Dami lang tao.
But we hope na hindi lang dito sa mga tourist
Spots
sites
ang
ang
rehabilitation.
rehabilitation and yung kumbaga yung hindi lang rehabilitation, conservation. In the first place, dapat hindi na tayo nag-rehabilitate ng mga place. We are a very biodiverse country. And to preserve and conserve our environment should be really top of our priority, di ba? Na parang if you really want to cash in on our resources, meaning to, kasi pag tinignan mo yung experiences ng other countries na talagang they really are investing on their environment. Investing means, di ba, dapat pinapreserve mo and then you bring in tourists.
And very proactive yung when they say they're conserving the environment.
Right.
Proactive.
Oo, na talagang talagang babudgetan mo, gagawan mo ng hindi mo hahayaan na masira, 'di ba? Pero we're seeing what we saw instead was, 'di ba? Our forest rangers themselves who are environmental defenders, they're not supported enough.
And they're threatened.
Yes, and the budget, where is the budget going? So parang I guess yun yung gusto nating makita in na mangyari sana under Secretary Loizaga na if this is the science, she knows it already. Let's see how she will act on what she knows and the policies that she will implement.
Are you personally hopeful ka ba under her?
Of course. Of course naman.
Wala namang mawawala kung maging
Oo,
hopeful.
at saka bihira lang talaga that experts like her are get yung talagang at the helm of a department that really needs this kind of expertise. Na hindi lang basta kasi 'di ba from our experience sa Duterte administration na talagang military men yung nilalagay niya in key positions eh. But here we see an expert
and a woman.
Yeah. So talagang we are and people even people observers are hopeful. And so
actually nung inappoint siya parang the community would we say welcome?
Yeah.
Wala masyado namang parang criticism or anything nung na-appoint siya.
Oo, basta siguro lang talagang I guess what this does is ang taas lang ng expectations. Kasi syempre,
given her background, parang you should be doing
right. So, syempre, yun yung babantayan natin.
Yeah.
When we go naman to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., his public pronouncements, at least, from the last 100 days, talagang nag-zero in siya on climate change. Eh. So, binalikan ko yung mga speeches niya, yung mga key speeches niya from the last, so there was his inaugural speech where he talked about climate change. Sabi niya, he vowed that the Philippines will not shirk from its responsibility. Kahit na maliit lang yung responsibility talaga ng Philippines. And then, hindi pala. This is not on climate change. It's the responsibility on plastic pollution. Na for the longest time, we have been touted as one of yung mga big contributors ng plastic pollution. Pero actually, I think that study has been
it's debunked already.
Oo, debunked. But that doesn't remove the fact na talagang malakas pa rin talaga tayo.
Responsible.
Yes. And given na we don't have the best waste management in the Philippines, talagang sobrang dami pang kailangan gawin.
On paper daw, okay.
Well,
sabi ng experts,
maganda
on
raw
paper,
yung laws.
okay.
Pero kasi nga, dun tayo lagi natatamaan sa implementation ng mga laws. So, yun yung una niyang sinabi, that we will clean up, sabi niya, supposedly. But let's see kung mayroong policy that will go into that direction. I guess, I don't know, will a plastic regulation or a law or an executive
regulatory
order
body
or meron bang magkakaroon ba ng law that will actually regulate na plastics? We'll see if that will happen. And then next, in his State of the Nation address a month after, on July 25, Marcos said the country has, yun nga, excellent laws on the environment. Pero, kailangan pang i-enforce.
Yeah,
and then
implementation talaga.
Yes, yun naman lagi ang issue natin about laws. But, in this speech, he called on corporations who, he called out companies who exploit natural resources. Sabi lang naman niya to follow the law. So yun yung sinabi niya sa kanyang State of the Nation address.
So, hindi pa ganun ka proactive if follow the law pa lang yun?
Oo, yun yung palang yung
ina-ask.
call out niya to just follow the law.
Mm-mm.
Kasi nga, maganda naman daw yung laws natin on the environment. And then, more recently, in the 77th General UN Assembly, last September 21, sabi niya na, again, the Philippines accepts its share of responsibility for climate change naman.
Mm-hmm.
But he also called on industrialized countries to immediately fulfill their obligations to cut their greenhouse gas emissions. So, that's one. And also to call for them, ito yung forever naman talagang call ng mga developing countries for the industrialized countries to finance, to fund yung climate financing ng and yung technology transfer for adaptation for climate. So yun yung kasama yun sa kanyang speech at the UN General Assembly. And interestingly enough, he was in New York for that. And his New York trip actually coincided with the 50th anniversary of martial law, diba? And then there was an event in UP Diliman na merong merong video na nagsalita si Greta Thunberg, which is who is an international climate activist. And there she said na supposedly meron siyang na-videohan siya na sinabi niya na there can be no climate justice under Marcos. So whether that is true or not, we have yet to see. Parang 100 days naman is really too short to say na na nawala na talaga.
At least yung mga sinasabi niya sa mga speeches niya, it's in the right direction, but for me it still feels templated. Parang it's still something anyone can say. Wala pang bold move.
Wala pang bold move, yes.
Or parang, wow, nakakaganon na announcement or plans on climate.
Or an executive order, something that you actually implement.
Yeah, wala pa.
Yes, parang yun yung kailangan nating tingnan. Kasi diba the first 100 days, usually naman, that is tinitingnan natin yung first 100 days, parang a preview of a president's effectiveness as a leader. Or even his priorities as a leader. So, in this case, Marcos, it seems na environment is always part of his speeches and his plans. But
baka more on setting the tone.
Yes, or making sure that it's always in the agenda. Pero if anything, our discussion today indicates na madami pa rin problema. The same problem haunts us until now. And even after 100 days, we are still, and ganun naman ng environment talaga. It's not really something that you can, unlike other issues, I guess, mas prolonged at mas malaki yung impact ng mga environment issues pag hindi sila.
One administration isn't really enough.
Right. Talagang maraming kailangang gawin to address issues like what we discussed today, which is climate change and disasters.
Is a lot.
The plight of our environmental defenders, tsaka reclamation projects, human activities that threaten our environment. Even if nagpalit tayo ng administration, the same problems are here. And siguro, ang kailangan lang nating bantayan, ano yun, as you said, ano yung mga bold moves na gagawin ng bagong administration? Or ano yung concrete, ano yung science-based approach na gagawin para siguraduhin na hindi man natin siya masolusyonan agad-agad, which is, yun naman is because of the nature of the problem. Meron ba tayong ginagawa na talagang alam nating magkakaroon ng dent or magkakaroon ng kumbaga para meron tayo talagang mai-contribute as a country that really boasts of our environment, 'di ba? Na we're really proud of our biodiversity. So dapat our leaders should be the first to be kunyari i-ano mo siya, parang kung ibibida mo siya, kailangan hindi mo lang siya ibida, but you're not following it up with the policies, with the laws, with the budget, the support that it needs.
Ito, given yung sinabi ni Greta Thunberg, ikaw, do you think there can be
grabe naman yung hot seat na ito
justice under the new president?
Marami pa rin for the Marcos, 'di ba? Marami pa rin naman tayong hindi pa rin naman nagbago kahit na naging president siya. There are still questions that he has to answer.
Yeah.
And 'di ba, kailangan pa rin nating isipin na hindi hindi porket presidente na siya, we will just take everything that he says and believe it, 'di ba?
Yeah,
Parang
yeah.
lagi, especially for journalists like us, na talagang we have to siguro mas guarded tayo about statements like this, na that they could be motherhood statements for all we know,
They
di
can be
ba?
ghost-written.
Pero what we want at least is makita natin yung policy, or makita natin na something is happening, na talagang may ginagawa at may nangyayari. And yung kay Greta Thunberg, hindi natin alam kung ano yung context kung bakit niya sinabi na there could be no climate justice under Marcos specifically. Sana hindi dependent kay Marcos whether or not magkaroon tayo ng climate justice. Like
That's a good point.
hindi presidente ang rason kung bakit magka-climate justice tayo or what, 'di ba? It's really a big thing if a president
Has the will,
has the
advocacy.
yes, pero it's not up to him. It's up to all of us.
Yeah.
And it's up to
And it's also because it's a global problem.
yes. And as much pressure as we put on him, ganun din, he will have to act. He will have to do something about it. So, yun, I guess, to answer your question. Ikaw ba?
Answer Miss Greta Thunberg's
Kaloka. Ikaw.
statement.
Ibabalik ko sa'yo yung yung tanong mo.
Ang hirap nga, no?
Oh, diba?
Actually.
Matapos
bakit
mo iba
ko
to
nga
sa akin.
tinanong yun?
Hindi, pero yun.
Pero
I think,
ako, personally, I still remain hopeful. Marcos or not. It's not, pag sinabi ko na hopeful ako, even under Marcos, not because I
nakalimutan
really
mo na.
believe in him or
Yeah.
and nakalimutan ko na yung mga kasalanan ng kanilang pamilya. It's because yun lang naman na din yung kaya mong gawin eh. You can only hope and do action. Call out the things that need to be called out. Yun nga, yung sabi mo nga, malaki kasi siyang issue eh. Hindi rin siya nasa isang tao.
Isang administrasyon.
Hindi siya nasa isang administrasyon. Hindi rin siya kayang solusyonan under 6 years. Or kahit mag-extend pa ang isang presidente, hindi niya yun kayang...
Hindi pwede mag-extend. Ano ka ba?
And hindi pwede mag-extend. Ayun. I'm hopeful na magkakaroon ng climate justice one way or another. Kung sino man ang presidente or not. And if that day comes, hindi tayo indebted sa kung sino yung presidente, kung sino yung nakaupo. Because the activists, the scientists, the journalists, the communities, ginawa rin nila yung trabaho nila. Sila yung mas babad sa kung ano yung nangyayari on ground. And they deserve as much thanks, I think. If ever, that day comes. Hopefully.
Well, that's a great point to end this discussion, I guess. Thank you, Iya, for joining me today. Huwag kang magsasawa. Hindi ka guest ha. Okay.
Oo nga. Hindi nga pala ako guest. Nag-thank you din ako.
Oo. We would also like to thank our prod boys here na kasama namin sa studio. And also, syempre, our producer. Our beloved, Jaira Rojas. Yes. Salamat sa pagsama sa amin ngayong araw. If you can follow Iya and the story she pursues on Twitter at Iya Gozum, and on Instagram at Iya GZM.
Nawala lang yung vowels.
Oo.
Guys.
Ano siya eh. Bakit ba wala lang?
May time sa internet na gano'n, parang nawawalan ng vowels yung mga tao para sa username nila.
Ayun. So, you can follow her there. For our listeners, if you have questions and suggestions for future episodes, you can reach me on Twitter and on Instagram at @gheronimo. Bye!
Bye!